Hello, good afternoon, and welcome. My name is Mike Webb. We'll have just a couple more minutes to let folks enter to the room. Thank you again for being here with the virtual art talk presenting Lauren Lohnny Thomas, moderated by Olivia Barney. All right, welcome everyone. Can everyone hear me? Just a quick chat to verify that I have sound. Yes, I do. So if anyone's struggling with audio, make sure you scroll to the bottom of your screen and you can click on settings for your microphone and enable the audio for this webinar. This webinar is being recorded. If you miss any parts of it or have to leave early, remember it will be released on the Heard Museum website for you to finish viewing or share it out with family and friends. Once again, my name is Mike Webb. I am the Public Engagement Manager here at the Heard Museum. It's my absolute honor to have this virtual art talk today with our guests, Olivia Barney and Lauren Thomas. I have a little bit of announcements and a little bit of housekeeping, and then we'll get into introductions and the meat of everything, the exciting parts of today. So um, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for the Heard Museum's continuing series of virtual art talks. It's our great pleasure to welcome our panelists today, our discussion host, Olivia Barney, collections coordinator and lead curator for Art and Soul, the Heard Museum's newest exhibition, and artist Lohnny Thomas, Lauren Lohnny Thomas, Nike expert 3D designer and lead designer for the Nike N7 summer collection. As always, if you enjoy learning about these art forms and the museum's collection, I really encourage you to visit the Heard Museum's Billie Jane Bagley Library and Archives. The library is free and open to the public. Right now, we are under summer hours, so make sure to check the website or come in person to see when the library is open. It's a fantastic place to learn more about the artists and work represented in the museum's collection. And for our local guests, be sure not to miss our two new exhibitions, as previously mentioned, Art and Soul, as well as Harry Fonseca Transformations. We also have our Maria and Modernism exhibition leaving at the end of July, so make sure not to miss that before it is gone. These virtual art talks are possible thanks to the support we receive from our Heard Museum members. The members get many special and exclusive benefits, including free museum admission every day, a 10% discount in the museum shops and cafe, and invitations to members-only events, lectures, and exhibition previews. Members also receive discounted event tickets and early admission to both the World Championship Hoop Dance Contest and the Heard Museum Guild Indian Fair and Market. Join us as a member today. You can purchase your membership online at heard.org or by calling in. And then before I introduce our program and moderator, just a few housekeeping notes for our viewers using Zoom today. Today's presentation is a webinar, and so you'll only see the screens and faces of our presenters. Your face is not shown anywhere. If you would like to propose a question for our panel, please write your question in the chat box using the chat feature when you scroll your mouse at the bottom of the page, or the Q&A box to the left of that chat box. We're going to do the best to pose your questions during today's discussion. Maybe there might be too many questions to field within the hour. We're going to do our best to answer those questions at the top of the list. Captions are available as well. If you would like to use them, just turn them on with the menu bar at the bottom of the screen. And okay, with that, it's my pleasure to introduce our honored guests, Lohnny Thomas and Olivia Barney. First up, we have Olivia. Hey, Olivia.
Hi, thank you, Mike. So yeah, I just wanted to give a little talk about what this virtual art talk will be before I hand it over to Lonnie. So this virtual art talk is inspired by a current exhibition at the Herd. You might have heard Mike say it. It's called Art and Soul. It opened at the beginning of May and will be up for the rest of the calendar year, with its last day being January 5th in 2025. The exhibition features shoes that have been painted on, drawn on, beaded, and styled by more than a dozen native artists, each pair of shoes being partnered with an artwork by the same artist, showing the style within which they commonly create. A major theme of this exhibition, which is why we're also doing this virtual art talk, is that it's demonstrating how artists' visual languages and their distinctive styles can translate across different mediums and forms, and it's meant to highlight the artist's innovation when they're practicing a new or different method. Following this focus, the Herd Museum is collabing with Nike and Seven to present our guest, Lauren or Lohnny Thomas, a 3D designer currently working with Nike and Seven. Now, while Lauren is not one of the artists in the Art and Soul exhibit, we wanted to continue with the topic of the innovation of Indigenous artists, showing another artist what they're doing in the footwear scene and in the creative world. I just want to give you a little bit of background about Lonnie before I pass it on to her and Mike again. Lauren is a 3D footwear designer in the Jordan brand and has recently expanded her role as a design director for N7. Hailing from Lennox Island and Mi'kmaq First Nation, she takes great pride in representing her cultural heritage at Nike. Lauren is committed to empowering Indigenous design not only within Nike, but also in broader contexts. Serving as the design lead on Nike's Native American Network leadership team, she actively contributes to the initiatives aimed at increasing Indigenous representation. Lauren has played a key role in developing an internship program with the Institute of American Indian Arts to support the growth of Indigenous talent within the design sphere at Nike. Beyond her corporate endeavors, she extends her passion for design by organizing a summer design program on her reservation in Prince Edward Island, Canada. And then away from her professional commitments, Lauren finds joys in pursuits like rock climbing, hiking, painting, indulging in various other hobbies. And she resides in Beaverton, Oregon. She shares her life with her wife and their dog. And I just want to pass it over to Mike and Lauren they want to share a video about what we're going to be talking about.
Honestly, in my career, I just want to make like cool shit and see my people win. My name is Lauren Thomas, and I designed the newest collection for Nike N7. It's a very loud collection. It's very bright, very colorful. I started this after Sam, who's the GM and founder of N7, let me know that I was going to be working with the Hallucination, a First Nations band specializing in what they call electric powwow music. I already looked up to these guys as a source of inspiration, and now I got to look to them for inspiration for this collection. It was amazing. The graphics are inspired by petroglyphs that you can see on walls of caves around Eastern Canada. I just thought they were beautiful, but also I just wondered what they meant. And so with the Hallucinations music in my earphones, I was just trying to design something that I would be excited to wear and just separate from the struggle that we go through as Native people. My tribe is from Lennox Island, which is a small island off the coast of Prince Edward Island, Canada. My dad's been a profound influence on me. He's just always wanted me to embrace my culture. For a long period of my life, I would never openly identify as being Indigenous. I didn't see it as something that was gonna help me out or valuable. And I had to unlearn that. It came with a lot of unpacking. In 2020, there was news that came out of British Columbia that a bunch of school children were discovered underneath a residential school. When that news broke, I just came undone for a while. And I kind of came out the other side, just really embracing my culture. This is where I came from, and I play such an important role to keeping all of this alive. in this collection. We really leaned into this idea of light coming out of darkness, this time after the struggle.
This shoe is celebrating details that are true to this culture.
The laces were ribbon, which is like such an important detail. They're inspired by ribbon shirts, which is what my dad would wear to any sort of business meeting or a formal ceremony. And then we wanted the sole to match the gradient, and having it translucent, I think really just made it pop. The stitching was a detail that I really wanted because I think Indigenous people are champions of sustainability, and you see in moccasin construction this kind of stitching. It's stuck around for so long because it stood the test of time.
If it's sustainable, if it's recycled, if it's less waste, it was like, duh, we have to.
Yeah.
This is like doing this whole concept right.
I think we really landed in such a good spot.
Yeah, none of it was easy, but that's what made it worthwhile.
Being a designer at Nike, I underestimated how important N7 was in our community. I think we care about visibility. I think we care about people knowing our stories. And so having a brand like N7 on a stage as big as the one Nike provides really says, like, I see you. Whenever we see other Indigenous people making it and winning and doing well, it like just fills you up. Like, I feel motivated, I feel charged, I feel inspired. And if I could play any part in helping other Native people succeed, then that's what I want to do.
So yeah, we want to share that video with you guys to show you the great work that Lohnny's doing. And now Lohnny's going to be taking over and giving a presentation on her artistic practices, just in general overall, but also about these shoes specifically. So take it away, Lohnny.
Thank you. Let me share my screen first because I'm not very good at multitasking. Okay. So first off, thanks, Liv, and thanks, Michael, for that introduction. Thank you to the Heard Museum for inviting me here to talk. And I also want to give a shout out to Trish Chi and Sam McCracken, the people behind N7, for facilitating setting this up, and for supporting me. I'm just so grateful. Man, what a day today is. Seeing that video go live today, drop today, was just surreal. And I'm just so proud of it and everyone who made it work. It wasn't easy to make for many reasons, least of which was my discomfort in being in front of a camera for a full day. I'm much more comfortable behind the camera. But the team we worked with, Apollonia Productions, a woman-owned Indigenous Canadian production company, just killed it. They were such a joy to work with. They were so fun, and it was inspirational to work with them, to say the least. So yeah, this first slide says it all. I'm so excited to be here with you all. So let's get into it. So I'm gonna try my best to weave a cohesive thread through my journey to where I am today. And then I'm going to get into a little bit more behind the scenes of the Summer 24 N7 collection, which is online today. You can also get it at Hibbets. And if you're in Canada, it's available in select stores. A little plug. Then we're going to talk about some process stuff. This is my favorite part. I'm so process driven. I love talking about how things are made. And I almost care about it more than the final product. If I ever show my work, I'm more into showing how I got there than the final product. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about impact and community, the work that I'm doing right now, which is becoming more and more the work that I'm most proud of. And then we'll wrap it up at the end with a Q&A. Okay, so I'm going to start off by saying that growing up, I was a nerdy little tomboy. And you know what? I still am today. And I think you'll find that relevant throughout the story. I'm also somebody who is guided by a sense of discovery, which is a nicer way of describing my career path, which perhaps more accurately could be described by this image. but it's true. I've always liked exploring, learning about what's out there, how things are made, and I apply nearly everything I've gathered along the way. So so here's my path to Nike as best as I can explain it. After returning to creativity after a long period of ignoring it, I did a degree in science. I didn't really like it that much. And so it wasn't until like my later 20s that I decided to try to be creative again. So I started with drawing. I always loved to draw as a kid, and it seemed like a good starting point. And so I thought I might be an animator. So I went to school for that. And then I picked up some summer woodworking classes at a local community center. I did that in the summer. And that's where I realized I really loved making things with my hands. And I was kind of good at manipulating 3D shapes in my head. And so I ended up making and selling furniture for a bit. And then at this point, I got really into this 3D application. I taught myself this 3D application called Moto, and I got really good at it. And I got so good that I decided I should teach it. And then also at that time, I started a business with my then girlfriend, now wife, her life savings, and I didn't make a dime, and she didn't leave me. But this picture always kind of cracks me up a little bit. We ordered a lot of product that we thought we could sell. We didn't sell it, and it is one of a few pretty expensive face plants I made along the way in my career. And I just love looking back at this picture because we had such a small apartment and we had nowhere to put all these boxes, and they literally blocked the light out of our home. And we had to Tetris the boxes around to get to different parts of our house. And also where those boxes ended up is also kind of a funny story because we didn't sell any of them. Um, so then the nerdy side of me beckoned, and so I got into working freelance for a VFX, for a freelance VFX in a small studio in Toronto, and I learned just so much from that experience, from an awesome group of guys that I still stay in contact with. And there I learned about the production process. I learned about rigging and animating and compositing, rendering, design, photography. I was just like a grunt at the studio, but I was also a sponge. I just asked so many questions, and I think I really cut my teeth in that studio, just learning how things are made in a really digitally focused environment. And then I started this image on the right. I started spending a lot of time with these things called nodes and node networks. And I see these things in my sleep. I'll just be walking around and I'm connecting these things, kind of problem solving. These are sort of like what we call procedural workflows, where we kind of build tools to build things for us. And it's a really flexible way of working. And a surprising amount of my life is spent looking at something like this. But I like it. I like it a lot. So after leaning really hard on the technical side, there is an emotional side of me that also has raging ADHD. And that side was like, hey, I want to paint a lot and try to make a video game. So this is who I am as a person, which is to say I'm not the kind of person who sets a goal and then sets off in a straight line towards it. I am not capable of that. I really just followed my nose towards stuff that inspired me, and I tried to be around people that inspired me. And if those people let me, I tried to help them on their projects so I could learn from them. And then, you know, ping pong, bleep blop, I ended up at Nike. And honestly, I don't know how I could better explain my journey here. I almost don't really understand how I got here, but I'm very grateful. And Nike's such a fun place to work, and I get to use sort of like my whole breadth of experiences that I gathered along the way seem to help me in one way or another in my job at Nike. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the Summer 24 collection, which is the first collection I worked on when I was invited to come design for N7, which was honestly a dream come true. I've been a fan of N7 since I found out about it. I've been buying the products since I got here. I've looked up to the designers who came before me, and they've inspired me. And so when I got a chance to hop in the design creative lead spot, I was all over it. And so just see it come to life. Like I started this over a year ago. The design process takes a long time. It's just crazy to see it finally here and seeing my friends and family see it, seeing other people in the community that I look up to reposting it. It's kind of crazy for somebody like me who's used to being a back of house 3D nerd. So I'm going to take you through some of the pieces of this and talk about how this collection came to life. So a big part of design, I think for everybody, is storytelling. Story is how we weave meaning into all of the elements of a design. And I think this is true for any kind of design work that we do. We are all just accumulations of different stories, and they all kind of interconnect. And I think stories at the core of good design. So I want to talk about some elements here that really brought things to life. And starting on the left, we have this graphic, which we've called the Rising Sun N7. And it looks really sketchy because it was sketched. I sketched this on my iPad, and I made this little water line of swooshes. And then I made the N7 logo like a rising sun. And the idea was that when you're looking eastward towards the rising sun, you're looking from a westward from an indigenous perspective. That's what I wanted that to represent. And this collection wasn't made by me alone. I worked with a team of people. And so our graphic designer, Danny, saw this sketch, and I handed it off to him thinking that he would make it all nice and neat. And he really liked the sketchy nature of it. He thought that that married well with trying to keep the larger stitching, which was a nod to like moccasin construction. And so it was his idea to keep it sketchy. And so you see this logo as I originally drew it in the sock liner of the footwear pieces, and then you can see it on the apparel pieces as well. And then the middle image just sort of like followed us around throughout the collection. The colors here are exactly the colors that you see on the footwear. It's kind of like a shifted, more summer appropriate palette that is reminiscent of similar palettes that you've seen in other N7 collections, the turquoise color being very important. And we just lightened it up, and I think it really landed for summer. And then on the shoes, if you can't tell from the image, those laces are actually made of black ribbon. And we played around with having like multiple ribbons in the shoe. It's supposed to be like powwow regalia, which has like hanging ribbons that really move and have a lot of vibrancy to them. It's a summer season, it's powwow season. There's a lot of dance. And so we have the laces laced in a way that the ribbon just falls straight, because when you tie a ribbon in a bow, it completely changes the meaning and the appearance of them. And then another theme that showed up on multiple levels throughout this collection, and I talk about it briefly in the video, was this idea of light coming out of the darkness. And that showed up in just so many ways, from like working with the hallucination. So hallucination, I mean, I was already a fan of these guys. And so when I was told that I was gonna meet with them and that I could use them as like a muse and a inspiration for this collection, I was just so excited. And I've been to their shows before. And one thing that you'll notice in their shows is that they keep their DJ booths in darkness, and then the dance floor is full of like super colorful lights. And so I asked them about that, and they said that it was a very intentional detail. They consider themselves to be like old school 90s DJs, where the focus is never on the DJ or the DJ booths. The focus is on the music and the dance floor. And so there's this idea of like light coming out of the darkness in that way. And then for this being a summer collection, we're all coming out of winter, and then there's just like this feeling of like elation when like the warm weather hits, or like going to that first powwow of the season, and seeing all of your cousins. And like, you know, for me, I used to go to powwows with my dad, and he used to make me work his booth. He would sell at powwows, and I'd have to man the booth while he went to go gossip and get food. And so we just wanted it to be this like celebration after like a darker period. And then for myself, like I mentioned in the video, I really feel like I transformed as a person after kind of coming through a really intense period of mourning after the news of unmarked graves of children being found underneath the residential school in BC. Now, this this wasn't news to me at all. My dad is actually a residential school survivor. He survived the Shubenacadie Residential School in Nova Scotia, and he already told me kind of everything that happened to him. I was very aware of what happened in those schools, and I've heard the chilling stories from my father in terms of what he went through. So none of this was news to me, is what I'm saying. And so I was honestly a little taken aback by how affected I was by this news. And I kind of just eventually had to let myself go through it. And I still honestly don't entirely understand my reaction. But I know that it changed me kind of forever. And I came on the other side of that, just really realizing my role in keeping our culture alive, and how important it was for me to start doing things and being more out there in my community, and helping my community and giving back, and just really kind of standing tall and proud as an Indigenous person. And so, yeah, that was like my light coming out of the darkness from this collection. And then the other part of it was when I was meeting with the Halusi, excuse me, when I was meeting with the band members, they had this really fun concept of this idea. They spoke about how Indigenous people, we often really identify almost like on an identity level with this struggle that we all collectively go through. There's certain traumas that all of Indigenous people are related to in some way or another. And they pictured like, what would that party be like? Like if we, whatever the struggle is, imagine it, we won, it's concluded, it's over. And then like we have a party the next day. Like what would that party look like the day after the struggle? And so that kind of pulled us in this direction of like a bit more like future thinking. What could things be like in the future when we have this amazing celebration? And so that also kind of directed me a little bit with how I made these graphics that you can see on the top of the bottom here, which show up on the apparel pieces. So I just want to talk a little bit about these patterns. To me, I got the inspiration from these from petroglyphs, which you can see on like the walls of like caves and other surfaces around Eastern Canada. These are kinds of things that you might go see on like a school trip or something. And on the bottom there, you can see what's called suckerfish script, which is a written language. The meaning is lost. This is something from my tribe. And I think all of us, well, a good chunk of us as kids, probably went through a phase of being really obsessed with ancient Egypt and hieroglyphics. And so I just thought it was so cool that we also had that, and just always kind of wondered about their meaning. And yeah, I always pictured that like, you know, if I was alive then, this also might be my job. I'd go out and tell stories on and create these images that might be looked at today. And so I just pictured like, well, what if these things were never interrupted and they just kind of kept developing, and they were influenced by the world today as everything is in art? And you know, like what would our emojis look like? Like I was kind of thinking silly like that. And I was listening to music. I was listening to Lucy a lot during this time, and playing with these sort of like the mix of like drawing little bits on my iPad and then bringing those into these like node networks to manipulate what I had drawn, and just trying to get something that also felt like it channeled a little bit of like the music, the electric power music that Lucy's so famous for. And I just was trying to like channel all of that and marry it together to make these patterns. And so I really liked how they turned out. And as somebody who's very process driven, I like showing off how this kind of stuff comes together. Okay, so speaking of process, this is my favorite stuff. I love talking about process. For me, okay, I'll let you in on a little secret. Working at Nike, I'm not really a sneakerhead. I love sneakers, but like I sometimes most of them are like, that's the red one, that's the blue one. I'm sorry. Like I said, I love sneakers, but I'm not a sneakerhead. But what I am is a problem solver. And I love sneakers for all of the problems that they present that need to be solved. And I bring my like breadth of experience from all of these different kinds of things that I've tried to pursue. They all come into play some way, somehow. We'll work on a project and I'll say like, hey, I saw something like that on this completely unrelated thing that I did, you know, when I was at a woodworking shop in Mimico outside of Toronto, and that'll apply. And so I just really like solving problems. And also, I think one of um, my biggest skills as a designer, the thing that I employ the most is my associative thinking. I think if you're a designer, everything applies. Every experience that you've had, you can apply it to what you're doing, and you should sort of try to encourage that way of thinking as much as possible. And I think this comes natural to us designers. When I'm in other creative working sessions with other designers, like we're just connecting the most random dots all the time, and just like kind of like speaking over each other, going faster and faster. And it's really like a fun environment to be in at the beginning of the design process when we're in like design sprints. Um, and so here are kind of two images where like on the top, I made like a little tool that spit out all of these like kind of fast looking random shapes for like inspiration. And shapes like these can be used potentially to direct like the development of a whole project, or they might just, you know, sit on an inspiration board and never get looked at. But these kind of things help sort of shift your brain and look at something differently and push you into a different direction. So I really like the inspiration phase of the design process where I get to kind of just like make random crazy stuff that'll never get made, but might direct thinking in a certain direction, if that makes sense. And on the bottom is an example of a finished product. It's one of the first products that I worked on when I first came to Nike. I started in cleated doing football, baseball, soccer, not soccer, sorry, lacrosse and softball. And yeah, it was just sort of my first entry into footwear, and getting to use all of these random skills that I had, and realizing how much they applied. Because when I first got here, I kind of wasn't entirely sure how it was going to fit, and was surprised to find a lot of similar minded people who worked like me, and also ones that had never seen the way that I worked and were eager to learn more. And Cleated was a place that really kind of let someone like me go ham for a bit while I was there before I moved into Jordan. I mentioned before that I have a passion for process, and everything applies. So I have, like most people with raging ADHD, like 500 hobbies on the go at any given point. And so this is an example of a little side project I was working on. I needed a texture of olives floating in water. And so I set about trying to make that. Here's a screenshot from the application Substance Designer, where I made this olive floating in water texture, which I applied to the inside of a jar that I modeled in 3D, and it worked and it was great. And in so doing, I learned a bunch of useful things. And this is exactly how I made the pattern for the flow short, which you see in the collection. The same concepts, and it applies. And it's also how I made the pattern for the, on the bottom here, the ripstop on the outside of this cleat. And then also all the hours that I spent learning and teaching myself how to paint. First off, just like being outside is like a very meditative and like reflective experience. So that that on its own brings you a lot, but also just observing and painting helped develop my eye for describing the surface and tiny detail that you would see in a rendering, but also that helps my painting as well, because rendering is really just a representation of light. That's what you're doing when you're rendering. And in order to do that, you kind of have to understand the terminology used to describe light. Those are literally how the buttons and knobs are labeled in these applications. You have to understand what you're going for to set them to the right things. But how that helps with painting is then, if, for example, I leave a location and I want to finish a painting, I know what the light might probably do in this scenario because I've understood light. So everything just feeds itself. And in my process, I also really love helping people. I've said before that if I was a basketball player, my highest stat would be an assist, and like every once in a while, like a dunk for the highlight reel would be nice. That's kind of like what I'm going for. So one of the ways that I like to help people is teaching. And so here is a screenshot from a class that I taught during COVID. It's a little pixelated, but that's all I got. And I was tasked with teaching these concepts of light that I was just talking about with rendering, and how you have to understand what light does in order to be able to render things or paint things or bring that sort of photorealism to anything. You're just understanding light. This is probably I could talk forever about this, and I won't, but I'll talk a little bit about it. So during this time during COVID, I knew I could only teach the class virtually. It is material that some people, not me, but some people might find a little dry. And so I kind of zhuzhed it up a little bit by making like a Bill Nye the Science Guy kind of setup where I had a green screen. There was a lot of props. You could see him holding a sword. We were talking about metals. I had like multiple cameras, so I could like turn and like do like a camera cut. It was a lot of fun. And so teaching is actually how I got into working at Nike. It's something that I'm still passionate about. And I always kind of leave myself open for people setting up a meeting with me if they just want to kind of nerd out or learn how to do something. Or if anyone wants to see like how I made something, I never keep any of that secret. I'm always happy to show people how I make things. And then the other secret to my process is just going outside. I think 3D people like myself, we don't necessarily always get a lot of sun. The 3D team is usually like in the closet in the back in the studio, although at Nike we do get a lot of sunlight. But anytime I'm kind of stuck and not getting anywhere, I know that just going outside and stepping away from what I'm doing and getting inspiration from things that aren't related directly to what I'm doing always helps my process. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. It's very similar to my career path. Is just sort of like all over the map, and then I make it work. And so the last bit that I'm going to talk about is the community and impact work that I'm doing. So we set out 2 years ago to create a partnership with IAIA, which is the Institute of American Indian Arts, which is an incredible school. Wish I knew about it when I was a student. It's just so lovely. All of the facilities that they have set up there are amazing. I was kind of emotional when I was there, just seeing all of these Indigenous students just like so confident and so excited to be doing what they were doing and supporting each other. And then the stuff, like the equipment that they had access to was incredible. And so we committed at Nike to bringing 2 students from IA each summer to be an intern at Nike. And the first year that we did this, I got an intern unexpectedly. I didn't think that was going to happen, but we had somebody that was very interested in 3D. So there's my intern, Devashina, and she killed it. By the way, check out this skirt. She made this skirt for her last day when everybody's presenting their summer projects. She made it like overnight with Jennifer Benally, our other intern. I don't know if you guys can see, but it says Jordan across the front. We let her raid the material closet. And then she got these like this really awesome like crushed velvet material in there. And then she sourced her own like basketball fabric and this was a hit. Everybody wanted to come in and see all the details. And I'm just so proud of her. And she just killed it. And she's killing it right now. She's doing her master's program. And yeah, I'm very proud of her. The other thing that I work on is on my own reservation, Lennox Island, Mi'kmaq First Nation. I started a design program there. And so this year I'm going in August, it'll be the third year. And this just really fills me up. It's something that's evolving every year as I get to know these kids. I just try to meet them where they're at and kind of go with them on whatever they're interested in. And it's great. They get so many grubby little fingerprints all over all of my gear, and I don't care. I love it. And it's just so cool to come back each year and see them all like half a foot taller, and like the shy kids are suddenly like the really outgoing kids, and like some kids like their voice is starting to crack, and other kids just like have things that they made while I was gone that they want to show me. And it's just my favorite thing. So it's like I said before, it's quickly becoming the work that I am most proud of. And that's it. We can open it up, shift gears to Q&A.
Great. Well, thank you for that, Lohnny, that great presentation. I just guess I have a couple questions myself, and then we can open it up to public Q&A. So I know you've talked about like your journey as an artist and kind of how you use the different techniques and such. So, and that you went to, I believe, Sheridan College for animation. How did you become interested even in like animation or getting into that world?
Yeah,
Hmm.
great question. It was really just I was out there to get my feet wet. Like I knew that I wanted to do something creative. I went back to school in my late 20s, and so I started at Sheridan. I knew that they had a really great art program there that's pretty renowned. And I started in their art fundamentals program where you just get a mix of everything, and then went for animation. And that was short lived because
Hmm.
I wanted more. I was still always very like technical, and I liked working with computers. And I just felt like this wasn't going to give me everything that I wanted. And I'd already done a degree that I didn't use, and so I was just really afraid of doing that again. And so I didn't commit. I ended up leaving, and I went to graphic design school, which I hated, and I dropped out after 1 year. And then I found industrial design, and that seemed like a really great fit. It was like very technical, lots of drawing, lots of like CAD working on the computer. It kind of felt like it had everything. And then after that, I went directly into VFX. So more of my pattern,
Yeah.
really, just trying everything.
And my last question before we open it up to Mike and the rest of our audience to ask is, since we talked about that and, you know, going through the different mediums and switching from VisFX to other topics and even painting you brought up as well, like, are there any new techniques or mediums you want to try out as an artist? Like, is there anything like you haven't done or maybe you've only touched the surface of that you want to go into in more detail?
Um, yeah, I would say don't show me any new ones. I'm really trying to like not
Hmm.
be so overcommitted. But I think AR is pretty interesting at the moment. I've played a little bit with like Gravity Sketch, and I know like Apple Vision Pro is coming out. I kind of really want to see like what kind of workflows these technologies are going to present. Um, and then also, I've been really into messing around with Unity, trying to figure out how to make like just like a 2D game. So kind of going backwards in time, but with like new
Hmm.
tech. And that's a muscle that is has been difficult to grow. There's a lot of coding, which is
Hmm.
something that I've just like my brain has rejected every time I've tried to pick it up. But it's really cool to like make something and then suddenly you can manipulate it with your keyboard. It kind of like
Yeah.
once it comes alive a little bit, it really inspires you to keep going.
Great. Well, thank you. Those are my couple questions following your presentation. Mike, if you want to bring up the public Q&A or if there's any questions, people can put them in the chat.
Yes, thank you both for that really, really insightful presentation and those questions, Liv. Really appreciative of you all. I did want to give the audience an opportunity to write some questions for you, Lohnny, if that's okay. So if you do have any questions for Lohnny, please enter those in the Q&A now. and we can kind of field those. I also wanted to remind you all that the drop or the collection dropped today, so make sure to check that out, as well as after our Zoom webinar, we have a short survey to fill out to make sure we're doing these right and to field your suggestions for the future. But some of the questions are coming in now in the chat box. I have, what is the biggest challenge you experience when documenting process, being that process is so big for you?
Good one. Yeah. I definitely do try to document process. I used to make a lot of tutorials actually. You could still find them on YouTube. I did a lot of Moto tutorials. And a lot of the time, those tutorials are really helpful for myself. I've had to go back and watch my own tutorials to remember how to do stuff. Um, and a really good way of learning stuff and keeping it in your brain is to learn it like thinking that you're going to have to teach it to somebody else later. That kind of like shifts your gears where you kind of like really stay active. Like I'll even pretend like, oh, I have to give a presentation on this later. And like right away, you're like, okay, what are the most important points? And then also just, classic note taking. I use an app called Notion to document a lot of my process. I'll write notes, take screenshots, and then I just give it enough tags that I can maybe go find it later. And then if you were to see my desk right now, there's notes everywhere. So um, uh, again, my pattern, just a little bit of everything all over the place is how I do it. And quite honestly, I forget a lot of stuff. I think I'm really you can only spread yourself so thin. And so sometimes I'll learn things thinking like, man, I'm going to forget this 2 months from now for sure. So really kind of deciding what you're going to dedicate your time to and how much you're going to use it, because if you don't use it, you'll lose it.
Thank you for that. And then a couple more questions coming in for some of our audience interested in getting into 3D design. What would be some of your top recommendations to start looking into as a beginner when it comes to maybe software, designer inspiration, or even companies to look to that are doing really cool stuff within 3D design?
Yeah. Also great question. I would say just get out there and explore a little bit. My native app that I use is called Moto, but also Blender is a great app out there. It's free. You can't really argue with free. And no matter what app you pick up, there's just like a plethora of training online for free. And I would just start with something simple. I think it's really easy to kind of get this idea of this big project in your head, and then you lose steam right after you start. So the best thing you can do is like give yourself such a tiny little project that you're going to get something finished at the end, and you're going to get that little bit of dopamine to reward you because you're like, ha, I made this and it's done, and I can post it on my Instagram and get likes, and I'll feel good about it. And then work your way up from there. And then figuring out what application you want to use is kind of like they all have different paradigms, they all have different strengths, and your brain works a kind of way, and there's going to be one out there that just works best for your way of thinking. And if you like really hands-on direct modeling, I think Blender, Moto, those are great starts. If you're somebody who's really technical and likes getting into the weeds, go ahead, try Houdini. If you want to make your own game, Unreal Engine, Unity, those are free to use and try. If you just like making things look pretty, maybe you want to use Substance Painter for material application. And you could just take other models and paint them and get into like putting the little chip paint and moss on your little like it's so fun to make things look weathered. This is one of my things that kills me about working in footwear, the amount of grunge textures and wear that I don't get to use is criminal. I just want to put like cracked paint and like stuff and I don't get to play with any of that in Substance except for my own side projects, of course. But yeah, there's just so much out there, and it's an industry that's changing all the time. So I'd also say that be committed and into and like happy about the fact that you get to learn all the time, because not everybody feels that way, and it's just not going to help you out to not want to be learning all the time if you're going to get into 3D or a digital creative industry in general.
Awesome. And with about 10 minutes left, we do have a little bit of a flood of questions coming in. I'll do my best to get to a few more.
Sure.
and kind of vary it up here. So one of our audience members asked, when you design a shoe for N7, do you try to design a concept that's specific to one tribe or all tribes? Also, are you limited to which sneaker you can design on?
Yes and yes. Um, I think designing something that's like pan-indigenous is kind of impossible. Like there's such a like wide range of diversity in Native peoples in North America. And so kind of picking one to highlight is definitely, I think, doing it more justice. Like you want to be able to put the spotlight on all the different cultures out there. And also we'll work with like other artists or other muses. And so like this is my first collection. I got to really pull from my own tribe. But the collection we did after this, we worked with another artist. And so the other part of this that I'm excited for going forward is highlighting other Indigenous talent in the community and other muses and just showing off these little pockets of stories from our very diverse communities.
Thank you. I'm going to try to combine a little bit of questions that feel a little bit in the
Oh, and
same
sorry,
lane.
I don't get to pick the shoe. The shoe is assigned to me when I start a collection.
Um, so that was a definitely important part of that question.
Mhm.
So kind of combining a couple questions, how do you feel like Nike and Nike N7, what are some strengths when it comes to how they support Indigenous communities, when it comes to values and beliefs that are within sustainability and campaigns for social good? Uh, yeah, what are some strengths that Nike is able to capture from your perspective?
Good question. I think there's a lot of ways to answer that question. For me, working at Nike, we have something called the Native American Network, which I'm a member of, and it has this mandate of um, like talent acquisition, like acquiring Indigenous talent to come work at Nike. Also, like job satisfaction, like helping Indigenous people have a great career here, and then like a communication, like letting the rest of Nike know about things that matter to us. And so for me, this is the first time that I've ever had Indigenous coworkers. I've always just been like the one Native person working somewhere. And so for me, that was really important for like just like healing when I was going through what I was going through in 2020. Just being around other Native people just like made me feel better. And Nike provides that platform for us, and we get to host events. We get to bring people in, and we get to do all sorts of fun stuff that helps inform other people. And then we just get to like, you know, do fun things together. So I think that's really fantastic. And then also just the fact that N7 exists, especially traveling around, meeting other people. Like I'm from Canada, so I didn't know all of the tribes and the culture here that well, but I've got to travel a bit and just seeing how meaningful N7 is in the community kind of really humbled me in and kind of let me know what I was working towards. And then inside of Nike, especially with like sustainability, which is something that's super important for me on every N7 product, you'll see like a tag that says, in every deliberation, we must consider the impact on the next 7 generations. And to me, that is such a message of sustainability. And Nike's committed to sustainability, but it's also a challenge. It often means a lot of work for a lot more people, or bringing in other teams that need to work on certain timelines, and there's more coordination involved. And I think companies everywhere are trying to solve that challenge right now. And I think a lot of the designers that I work with are very invested in it and are still finding it hard because we don't have all of the process really worked out yet. So you have to just keep um, just like almost being a nag, just being like, what about sustainability? Don't forget sustainability. The other thing that I do is when I'm talking about sustainability outside of N7 is remind people that if we're going to be talking about sustainability, we should be inviting Indigenous voices into those conversations always. And so that's met with actually pretty good feedback. So that's encouraging as well.
Awesome. I have two more questions for us. And I'm sorry if I didn't get to your question. We're just running out of time. Um, so directly, how do you stay patient with your projects as they develop and grow, especially before seeing the results that you want? What are your methods for being patient in the process?
I think I'm patient in the process because I love the process. And I love it more than the final product. In fact, when I went to make a portfolio for my job at Jordan, I had to go find where a lot of the projects that I worked on ended up. Like after it's off my plate, it's often like, 2 years before you see it, but this is a thing, this is a problem for me before. I just save all of these like screenshots of like my like node networks or like how I built something. And I just get so into the process that that's my happy place. So I'm happy to be there anyway. Oftentimes projects get dropped and people can be really upset about that. They put a lot of work in for a long time and the project's dropped. And I feel more invested in some projects than others, but oftentimes when projects get dropped, I'm like, okay, on to the next one, because I've gathered so many fun things along the way that I'm going to take with me that like I didn't feel like I lost anything. There's definitely that like part of a project where you're like, I'm so excited about this. Oh, this is harder than I thought. And then the dark night of the soul thing, a portion of it. And then like you finish it and you're like, okay, that was really hard. And it's kind of better than like that. You see those graphs of like the life of a project. That dark phase, you're going to get that no matter what. And you just have to kind of find ways to come back to a project and recognize that you work in rhythms and that you might be really into something right now, but maybe your body needs you to go outside for a little bit and maybe just let the back of your mind work on something for you and come back to it when you're back in the rhythm again. Um, but also I'm not perfect at this. Like I have fully abandoned projects that I look at and just feel bad and guilty about anytime I see them. So it's a mix of all things, I guess.
And last question for us. Again, sorry for those who I didn't get to, but thought it was fitting to end on this one. This audience member really enjoys seeing all of your conceptual designs displayed. Will you be showcasing your designs anywhere in a gallery show, or will there be an opportunity to see more of your work in the future somewhere?
I've never done a gallery show. I've helped people who have done gallery shows and gone to those shows, but it's honestly something I've never considered. Um, yeah, I kind of just throw my stuff up on like Instagram or Twitter. This is like honestly, you're highlighting a problem for me. I need to be better at like collecting everything that I do and put it in like an organized central location. Um, I think yeah, I don't have any plans for that in the near future. But that's probably a good idea. I'll say that.
Maybe you can come to the herd.
Yes, maybe. That'd be great.
Speaking of that, we are at time. I have a minute left just to close up. Again, thank you so much, Lohnny, for being able to commit to this. We're really excited to be able to talk to you on the day of your summer collection drop. Olivia, thank you again for moderating. Olivia, again, curated Art and Soul, which we based this talk off of. So again, if you're local and you want to come visit the museum, Art and Soul is on display now. How many shoes are there in the collection, Liv, to check out?
There are
Oh,
15
yeah.
shoes there, 30 total artwork pairings, and 17 artists represented.
Beautiful. Everyone's going off in the comments. Everyone's really thankful. Take a
Yes,
couple
I
minutes
was
to fill out the
distracted reading the
survey.
comments.
And any closing remarks, Lohnny?
Nothing beyond just thank you so much for inviting me to do this. This is a lot of fun. If anybody wants to reach out and ask more questions, you can find me on Instagram, Lohnny.3feathers, or just Google me and message me on any other platform. I'm always happy to answer questions afterwards. But huge thank you to you guys. This is a lot of fun.
Thanks to you too.
All right, everyone. Thank you again for attending, and we'll see you at the next one.